Welcome to Cindy's Adventures in Stitching, and today we're going to do a tutorial on how to make wool or wool felt eggs. You can use either material, it doesn't matter. Here's a basket of some that I've made, and I just used decorative embroidery stitches on the seams. And then here is everything that you need in order to make this project. You don't need any special tools. You can use just a regular ink pen. You don't even have to have a friction pen or an erasable, water erasable or soluble marker. You can just use a regular pen. This is the pattern that we're going to use. Here's a variety of the wool that I had purchased in order to make the eggs. Here's an egg that's finished, and I'm going to show you how you can use embroidery stitches in order to make the eggs to embellish them. You can use embroidery floss, just regular DMC embroidery floss, or these are spools of Valdani variegated, but you don't even have to do that. You can just use regular embroidery floss. One thing I did want to mention is I did use, these are called number 22 chenille needles for wool applique, and what's great about them is they have a really, I don't know if you can see that, but they have a very large eye in order to get, well, in fact, I think I used 4 strands of regular DMC floss, and it was very easy to get through that eye. And it's a nice sturdy needle, it's not real long. So I do think that made the project a little bit easier to complete.
So those are for old eyes?
Those are for old eyes, unfortunately, yes.
Where can I get some?
Old eyes?
No, the needles.
Oh, well, I got those at Primitive Gathering, but you can probably get them anywhere. Great thing about needles is they're not very expensive. I find that thread is expensive, of course. Wool is expensive. Wool felt is not as expensive as wool. And then quilting cotton has really gone up in price. These are 2 of the books that I used as reference to choose the embroidery stitches that I used on the eggs, and they're both very good. I would recommend them both. They do a nice job on the illustrations and very easy to follow instructions.
Do we have links for those?
No.
Can we find them?
I found, gosh, this one is super duper old. I bet I got this 25 years ago. And I got it before Amazon. And this I got at a quilting store. In fact, it was called All in Stitches, I think. And we just went to it in Indianapolis. I'll have to double check the name of that quilt store. I think it's All something. You ask me these hard questions that I'm not prepared for. Okay, so the first thing that I did was, this is included in your pattern, and I cut it out. Well, first I made a copy of it, and then I cut it out, and then I traced it onto cardboard. And make sure that you measure the top. That is important, because the top, even though it may not look it, it is a little bit different. If you would go to fold this, you can see that the bottom is a little bit wider. So you do need to... I
guess so to give the egg a little teardrop shape.
Yeah, that gives the egg a little teardrop shape. And what was nice about transferring it to cardboard is, especially if you make lots of them, you need to be able to, you're going to trace around that onto your wool. But before you trace it onto your wool, you're going to prepare your wool with, I used SF101 Shape Flex Interfacing. It's a Pelham product. You can pick it up at Joann's. And it's very easy to adhere. I have much better luck with Shape Flex than I do no-show mesh, in that the Shape Flex adheres or glues better to the fabric. Even if it's quilting cotton, I like Shape Flex better than no-show mesh. A lot of people don't, and that is personal preference only. One thing I do have that's a little bit specialized besides the needle is I bought these scissors. These are wool scissors that well, they called them that on Amazon, and they're super sharp, and you need to have sharp scissors in order to cut through wool, and I'll demonstrate that in just a minute. So I'm going to go back to the sewing machine and show you what we did.
You want to get my doll scissors so you can use as a comparison?
Do what?
You want to get my doll scissors so you can use them
No,
as a
I don't want my wool all chewed up, because it does chew it up for sure. Okay, so notice how well I'm walking too. After my surgery, it's so much better today than it had been. So here's a picture of how I traced, and I mean, like I said, you can just use a regular ink pen, and I marked the top. I just wanted to show you, all you have to do, it's just regular tracing. Just go in short strokes around the quarter section of the egg. Now, what I did use is I used this turntable to turn it, but you don't have to have a turntable. I just did that because it was right there, and I do think it made it go a little bit faster, but you don't have to go out and buy one by any means. And a little side story on that turntable, I had bought, nope, I got off just a little bit. I bought this top part from Missouri Star, and when I bought it, I thought it came attached to a turntable. Do you remember that we went to Menards and...
Yeah.
And did you, I can't remember, did you buy...
Yeah, it's called a Lazy Susan. It's a mount that mounts on the two pieces of wood. If you open it up there, you can see, maybe, you can kind of see the metal down inside there. I don't know, it's probably $10 or $12. I'll find a link and put it with the instructions, or put it with the description. But I think that's a bar stool top, and then that was just a round piece of wood that I cut for the base.
But this bar stool top was at Menards as well. That was ready to go, ready made. So if you didn't have a way to cut out the bottom, you could buy two of these.
Yeah, do that.
And then how did you attach, do you screw that on the bottom of it? Is that what you did?
Well, you're asking me to remember what I did
I know, it
yesterday.
was a long time ago.
I think there's holes drilled in the bottom. Yep. So I drilled access holes.
Okay.
You can see in the bottom of that piece of wood, and you just spin that until your screws line up. So you would mount the turntable to your bottom piece first, and then you use these holes to access the screws to screw to the top piece.
If I were super ambitious, I would have painted that by now. That probably would have looked really nice and been cute, but...
Yeah, because that was what, 3 years ago, 2 years ago?
I think it was more than that. I think it was maybe 4 or 5 years ago. I've had it for quite a while, and I do use it a lot. I use it to trim up blocks,
You just
especially...
got the top, though.
Huh?
The top's only been that piece there.
This?
Yeah, because you went to Missouri Star last year, year before.
It was right after COVID, so
Yeah, 21.
so it was 21.
Yeah.
So what's this, 23? So I guess it has only been, kind of seems longer than that. But I do really, really like it because it spins so easily. And
I might come borrow that for a welding project, because that would be really nice for welding round pipe. I could just spin that. And
no, you're not. You're not going to use that for a welding project.
I'll bring it back.
No, it'll be all burnt and everything else.
It'll be that way.
Okay.
I'll let you use my tools.
I know. No, you don't.
I do too.
Well, maybe.
That's my ink pen.
Whatever. I see I missed a spot. I'll have to say I was just a little bit intimidated when I got that pattern, because I thought it might be hard to do, but really it wasn't at all. Oh, I'm going to turn this over. I guess it doesn't matter. It was not hard to do. And sewing the egg sections together is not hard to do. Okay, so I've got it traced. I'm going to mark, this is the top.
So you need 4 pieces in order to do one egg?
You need 4 pieces in order to do one egg. And this section, these scissors, there were 3 of them that came together, and I'll show you how you cut them out. It really works best when you're cutting wool to make your cut as long as you can. So you don't want to go little bitty cuts. You want to go
You say that with an 1.5 pair of scissors.
I know, but you can, I'm not going snip, snip, snip. I'm going as long of a cutting stroke as I can, and then you can just cut off the end. Now, what I did, because I'm kind of a tightwad and wool is so expensive, I took off this shape flex, and then you can kind of see there's a selvage edge. I just cut that off as well. I'm going to throw that away. But then I kept these little pieces, and I've got a container over there because you never know, you might be able to use those for something. And if you notice on that pattern top, it embellishes with all kinds of wool, but I didn't want to take that much time.
Slacker.
I know. But the other thing too is I really like the embroidery on there. Okay, so that's how you do that.
Still look like footballs.
They do kind of look like footballs, you're right. Easy peasy on that. And then what you do, you've got 4 sections here, and you're going to sew 2 of them together, making sure that you've got the tops, top and top, and then you're going to sew the other 2 together, right sides together, so wool to wool. Shape flex is on the outside. The first one that I sewed together, I did not use any kind of stabilizer. I didn't use shape flex, didn't use no-show mesh, and it was kind of wonky. I think it stretched maybe a little bit as I was sewing it, so the shape flex really made a big difference. Now my stitch length is, on my machine it defaults to 2.5 millimeter. I'm going to lengthen that to 3.0 just because this is so thick. And when I sew this together, I'm only going to sew one side on each of them. I'm only going to sew one side. And the key to making sure that your ends line up, like I can show you this one. I did such a good job on this one. And on the bottom, the key is to make sure that you get your points together whenever you start to sew. So I was very, very careful that I started, and I also kept it at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And another thing I did on the very first one that I sewed together was I made my seam allowance just a little bit smaller, and it didn't look as good. So a 1/4 inch seam allowance really does work well. And I've got my 1/4 inch foot here on my machine, and I go pretty slow so that I can keep that 1/4 inch even, I guess you'd say. And I stopped and I kind of turned it a little bit, and you're gonna stop when you get to the end. I didn't backstitch. I suppose that you could, but I didn't really feel like I needed to. I'm going to trim that. So the first one's done. Okay, ready for the second one? I'm going to put it underneath here. Keep your 1/4 inch seam allowance as even as you can. And I always kind of kept my eye on that point to make sure that that top didn't shift as I was sewing. Because if it does, and you get down to the bottom and they're not even, then, or they're not lined up, I guess I should say, and then you got crooked seams at the bottom.
That makes for a wonky egg.
Then you got a wonky egg. Nobody wants a wonky egg for Easter. So I cut my ravelins, throw it on the floor.
Because I just swept.
Then you turn them so that the wool is on the outside. And see, I didn't have any trouble with those seams coming apart, so you really don't need to backstitch on that. So then you're going to put them together. And then you're going to match up your seams, and you're going to nest them. So when I nested these, since I'm going to put it in my machine this way, I made it so that the top seam is coming towards me so that my presser foot will be going over the top of it, because I think if you did it the other way, then you got to fight with that, and I just think it would be more difficult. So that looks like that's lined up nicely, and I honestly didn't think about or didn't worry about the bottom until I got the top done. And again, my stitch length is 3.0. And then once I get going, then I kind of look at my bottom. And again, I'm going to nest my seams, and I'm going to try to keep the edges over on the sewing side together. And I'm going slowly. You kind of have to fiddle with it a little bit. This is not something that you can zip and sew fast. I'm getting ready to get to the seam, and I just want to make sure that I get it lined up. So since we're filming this, of course, it probably won't. I've got my needle down so that it doesn't move, and I can scooch it over to the side of my 1/4 inch foot. And then you're going to leave an opening. And it doesn't hurt to go ahead and backstitch that.
Oh, I hear one of the kids down there snoozing. You hear that? Who is that?
Jed.
Oh.
I know that kind of worries me because you really can hear him. I hear him breathing during the day. Can you get a picture of him? You probably can't. Can you, if I move this, you can maybe get a picture of him. Hear him?
I don't know if it's coming through on the camera or not, but I could hear it through my other ear.
I don't know, these microphones are pretty sensitive.
Especially when you wear them to the bathroom.
We don't want to talk about that. Okay, so I'm going to leave an opening.
I'm still laughing.
Oh, stop. I'm going to leave an opening, about, I don't know, what'd you say, that's 1.5 inches, 2 inches. It doesn't have to be a very big opening. And finish my sewing. Gonna back it up. Take it all the way to the seam. My seams are nested.
Kind of like the kids.
Yeah, so true.
I wonder if that's like snoring for a rabbit.
I wonder if it isn't like snoring, because, you know, he's kind of acts like an old man.
I think he is.
I think he is too.
I know how he feels.
Okay, so here is our moment of truth. I start at the point, and I'm gonna take it inside out. Push this through. Okay, the top looks good. And the bottom looks good. Yay! So then you kind of have to work with that just a tiny bit about, you know, opening up that seam and poking it out. And then the next thing that you do is you stuff it, and then we can do a ladder stitch. You can do a ladder stitch, you can do a whip stitch, whichever you prefer. I kind of think the ladder stitch does better, but I also think the ladder stitch is not an easy thing to do. So you don't have to watch me stuff it. I'll stuff it, and then we will demonstrate the ladder stitch.
I just gotta say, I was so excited when we got these, or this hanger out of the sewing area, so I stopped hitting my head on it. So filming this for Cindy, I've hit my head 3 times on this thing. It's bringing back bad memories.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm not taking it down, so.
Yeah, I didn't figure that.
Yep. Now, I don't profess to be a professional ladder stitcher. So it's kind of like do as I say, not as I do, because I'm just not that good at it, to be honest, but I do think it's the best way to close this up. And also wanted to show that when I load up my needle like this, I used that wool applique needle, and I've got a loop down here at the bottom. So when I threaded my needle, I threaded 2 pieces at a time, or I threaded the ends together. It's 1 piece of thread, but I put the ends together, and then I've got a loop down here. That way I'm not dealing with a knot, or I'm not having to look at hiding a knot. So for this ladder stitch, I'm going to loop it to secure it, and then I'm going to work my way across. So I'm going to work up, go to the side, cross back over, go underneath to the side, cross back over to the side, back and forth like that. So I'm kind of hiding my stitches underneath the fabric. You can do that, or you can do a whip stitch. I don't know. I think the ladder stitch is better in hiding the thread that you use, but sometimes it's not real straight. So if you can perfect that, I say good for you. So the first thing I'm going to do is I am going to take my needle and make a stitch in there. Then I'm going to go underneath. So there's my thread. I'm going to go underneath, and I'm not going to use big strokes of the needle, and that way you can see it's kind of hidden under there. Then I'm going to cross over, so I'm going to cross my thread over to the other side, and again I'm going to travel, I guess is a good word to use, under my material, so that I'm kind of working my way down the egg. And I think that maybe one of the secrets to doing this and it not stretching your wool is don't pull it super tight, but small strokes. And again, I'm keeping make sure I keep my finger and thumb on there so that it doesn't come unthreaded. Now I'm kind of just working my way down. I do not profess to be a professional ladder stitcher, because I'm not at all. But I do think this is a pretty good way to hide your thread. I think the key is not to stretch your wool as you're doing it, and maybe not to pull super duper tight as you're going along.
So you're just alternating sides?
I'm just alternating sides, and I'm working that thread underneath the fabric so that you don't see it. And if you didn't see, in one of our videos I talked about a sewing hack for stuffing, and I just go to Walmart and I buy the cheapest bed pillow I can find. I don't know how much they are, $3 maybe, $4, and I rip it open when I get home, and that's what I use for stuffing. Now some people may say the stuffing's not as good, but for my use, my application, it's just fine. So there I've got it sewn together, and that's not too bad. It's a little wavy, but when we embellish that, you'll not notice that at all. So I'm going to tie this off. And again, this is how I do it. I'm not saying that, you know, I'm an expert or anything on that.
Now my personal preference is when I have to go to the emergency room to get stitched up, I like the running whip stitch. That way it's easy for me to snip and take the stitches out myself.
Oh my goodness, well, let's hope that doesn't happen. I do like to keep a little piece of wool handy for me to put my needle on, because that way it doesn't fall on the floor and my husband doesn't step on it, because he tends to get a little bit testy about stuff like that.
I can't imagine why.
So I'm kind of moving my stuffing around so that my egg has a good shape. And there you go. You've got a wool egg. And really, it's not hard to do. It really isn't. If it were hard to do, guess what? I wouldn't do it. So let's talk about embellishing. Okay, we're going to embellish with a feather stitch, and I'm going to use 3 pieces of floss or strands of floss. And when you divide this or you take it apart, I have never found a good way to do it other than 1 strand at a time. Because if you try to do 2 or more strands to separate, I have always just ended up with a mess. So I've got my 3 pieces of floss, and I'm not going to put a knot in the bottom of it, and I'll show you. You just don't need to. Now some people will tell you, Tula Pink will tell you not to lick your thread when you're trying to load up your needle, but you know what? I do, because I wear chapstick all the time, and that little bit of wax kind of helps the thread stay together.
Someone is addicted to chapstick.
I am addicted. But see how, I mean, that was easy to load up. So there again, I just have a tail at the top of my needle, and I would say, how far would you say that is as far as?
Probably 30 inches, 32 inches.
It's pretty long, but it takes a lot of floss to do this. So I'm going to start at the bottom, about where that intersection is, and I'm going to go up through my seam, and I don't have a knot. I'm just going to pull it until I no longer see my thread. It's gone. So then I'm going to go back in, and I'm going to sew in a V. So I take that to the side. Now when I pull this tight, I don't pull it super tight. I just pull it so that my threads are together and it's in that crease. And then I come down to here, and I'm going to go back to this side, or over to this side, and I try to even those up. Come back to there. Now this time I'm going to travel up higher and try to make it the same distance. This from here, here to here, so that it's about the same distance. Doesn't have to be exact, of course. And I'm going to kind of straighten out my thread a little bit so that it doesn't get in a knot. Sometimes I even kind of hold it, because my thread is notorious for getting into a knot.
None of us ever have that problem.
It's so aggravating.
Kind of like when you run out of thread in your bobbin.
Kind of the whole bobbin thing again, yeah. And here we go to the side. Come back down, and I'm going to use the hole that I just used. Come over here to the other side.
I forgot you zoomed in so far. It's such a small window, and I'm chasing you around. You won't hold your egg still.
I'm sorry. I'll try to hold my egg still, and I'll move my thread. How's that, instead of moving my egg?
The cameraman would appreciate that.
Okay. Can't you tell we're novices in this whole camera stuff? We probably didn't even have to tell him. Oh, now see here, I went up a little bit higher than I really would have wanted to, but it's no problem. I'll just go underneath and come up where I was, and hopefully that will disappear.
There you go, moving your hands again.
Sorry, I couldn't help it. Come over to the other side. Hopefully you can kind of get the idea what I'm talking about here.
I threw you off track there, didn't I?
Yes, you did. And that kind of showed up a little bit there. But that's how easy the feather stitch is. You just keep working your way up. I've started at the bottom, I worked my way to the top. I'm going to knot this off, and I just do it the old-fashioned way, tie a knot. Do that twice. just to make sure that it stays. And then I'm going to clip that. And then it kind of, if you clip it close, it kind of sinks down in there. And then you're going to load your needle up again with 3 strands. Start at the bottom. You can see where I've done it here. And then work your way back up to the top. And then you've got it done. So that's how you make wool eggs for Easter. Pretty easy, and I think they're really cute, and you've got them for years and years to come. Hope you enjoyed our video today on Easter egg making, and next for the drawing. It's 6 o'clock on Friday, April 7th, and we are ready to draw the winner. We are using pickawinner.co, and I'm ready to click, and let's see who won. Diane Wilson, Nana Cupcake. I remember her comment too.
Really?
Yeah, I do. I think she often comments, so that's really sweet that she won. Diane, if you would contact us in the email that's in the description, which is cindysadventuresinstitching@gmail.com, and let us know which of these 2 bags you would like to receive. And then, Sam?
We will reply to you with a word for you to edit into the comment that you made on the video. And that is just to verify that it is in fact you that is reaching out to us. There have been several YouTube people that have been scammed by the wrong person reaching out to them. So this is just a 2-step verification for us to verify that it is in fact you. And we'll give you instructions in the return email that we send you on how to enter that word into your description. And once we get that and your address, we'll send your bag to you.
Congratulations, Diane. I'm excited for you. And then for the viewers, just wanted to say a couple comments. I think my cousin Lisa and I are going to participate in Tomato Tuesday, and I'm interested in if you are participating in any sew-alongs, and if you are, what are you participating in, and who was the Flosstuber that started that sew-along. It was really fun to do this video, this tutorial on the wool eggs, or again, you could use wool felt. I was just thinking today that it would be a great hostess gift for whoever is hosting Easter brunch or Easter dinner, and they don't take that long to do, and we are hoping that we can do more giveaways. I have lots of ideas for project bags, and I don't need 1,000 project bags, so I'm hoping to give away lots more to the viewers in the future. So thank you very much for watching. Congratulations, Diane, and happy stitching.